One of them produced nearly 8,000 horsepower and was scrapped anyway. Another weighed more than a Boeing 747 and needed its own zip code just to turn around. Engineers did not build these machines to be practical. They built them to prove a point. Bigger boilers, heavier frames, more wheels, more fire, more everything. These were locomotives designed by people who looked at the impossible and said, "Hold my coal shovel." Here are 10 Golden Era monsters that were engineered beyond all reason. Number 10. Norfolk and Western Class A. When the Norfolk and Western Railway needed a locomotive to haul heavy coal trains and time-sensitive freight across the Appalachian Mountains, they did not buy one from a manufacturer. They built it themselves, from scratch, at their own Roanoke shops in Virginia. The result was the Class A, a 2-664 articulated steam locomotive that became one of the finest freight engines ever designed. A total of 43 Class A locomotives were built between 1936 and 1950. Number 1218, completed in June 1943 with specific approval from the War Department during the height of World War II, was assembled in just 2 weeks, breaking all prior shop records. These machines weighed 573,000 pounds for the engine alone, with a combined engine and tender weight approaching 951,600 pounds. They operated at a boiler pressure of 300 pounds per square inch and generated 114,000 pounds of tractive effort. With 70-inch driving wheels, they could routinely pull 150 loaded coal cars at speeds exceeding 70 miles per hour. The N&W was the last major American railroad to abandon steam, holding on until the late 1950s because their locomotives were simply that good. The Class A engines featured roller bearings on all axles and high-capacity boilers that made them the most mechanically modern American steam locomotives of their time. Only one survives today, number 1218, which ran excursions from 1987 to 1991 and is now displayed at the Virginia Museum of Transportation in Roanoke. Number 9. Southern Pacific GS4 Daylight. Southern Pacific's GS4 class was not just overbuilt in terms of power, it was overbuilt in terms of sheer style. Built by the Lima Locomotive Works in 1941, these 484 Northern-type locomotives were designed to haul the famous Coast Daylight passenger train between San Francisco and Los Angeles at speeds that could exceed 100 miles per hour. The GS stood for either General Service or Golden State, depending on who you asked and what year it was. During World War II, when the War Production Board would not allow railroads to build locomotives solely for passenger service, Southern Pacific cleverly reclassified the designation to General Service, so they could keep ordering them for freight and military duties as well. The GS4 produced over 6,300 horsepower and weighed approximately 433 tons with its tender. With 80-inch driving wheels, it was built for speed first and everything else second. 28 GS4 locomotives were constructed between 1941 and 1942. The only survivor is number 4439, which sat vandalized in a Portland park for nearly 2 decades before being rescued in 1974 and restored to haul the American Freedom Train across all 48 contiguous states for the 1976 bicentennial celebration. It remains operational today at the Oregon Rail Heritage Center. Number 8. Pennsylvania Railroad Class T1 Duplex. The Pennsylvania Railroad looked at conventional steam locomotive design and decided it was not good enough. Instead of building a bigger version of what already existed, the PRR collaborated with Baldwin Locomotive Works to create something entirely new, the T1 Duplex, a 44444 locomotive that split its driving wheels into 2 independent sets on a single rigid frame. 2 prototypes, numbers 6110 and 611, were delivered in 1942, styled with futuristic streamlining by legendary industrial designer Raymond Loewy. In testing, the T1 generated over 6,000 drawbar horsepower at speeds above 55 miles per hour, outperforming a 4-unit EMD FT diesel set rated at 5,400 horsepower at any speed above 26 miles per hour. The prototypes routinely held 100 miles per hour with trains of 13 or more cars on the 713-mile run between Harrisburg and Chicago. Convinced by these results, the PRR ordered 50 production T1s in December 1944 for $14.1 million, roughly $282,500 per unit. But in regular service, the production T1s proved prone to violent wheel slip at both low and high speeds. The complex poppet valve gear was nearly inaccessible for maintenance. By 1948, the PRR decided to dieselize all express passenger trains, and by 1952, every T1 was out of service. All 52 were scrapped by 1956, and not a single one was preserved. Today, a non-profit group called the T1 Trust is building a brand new T1, number 5550, with an estimated completion date of 2030. Number 7. Chesapeake and Ohio Class H8, Allegheny. If you want to know what the most powerful steam locomotive ever tested on a dynamometer car looks like, it looks like the Allegheny. The Chesapeake and Ohio's Class H8 was a 2-6 articulated locomotive built by the Lima Locomotive Works between 1941. 60 of them were constructed, and they were engineered for one brutal purpose: hauling massive coal trains over the Allegheny Mountains of Virginia and West Virginia. During dynamometer car testing, an Allegheny recorded a peak reading of 7,498 horsepower at approximately 46 miles per hour. No one has ever published a higher dynamometer horsepower figure for any steam locomotive. With its 67-inch driving wheels and 110,200 pounds of starting tractive effort, an Allegheny could move an 11,500-ton coal train at 45 miles per hour. With one Allegheny pulling at the front and another pushing from behind, these monstrous trains would blast at full throttle from White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, to the summit at Allegheny, Virginia. The engine alone weighed approximately 771,000 pounds, and with a fully loaded tender carrying 25 tons of coal and 25,000 gallons of water, the combined weight approached 1.2 million pounds. The H8 also had the heaviest axle load of any steam locomotive ever built, at 86,700 pounds on the lead driving axle. Yet for all that engineering brilliance, the age of diesel made them obsolete in barely a decade. Retirement began in 1952, and by 1956 every Allegheny was gone. Only two survive, number 1601 at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan, and number 1604 at the Virginia Museum of Transportation in Roanoke. Number 6. Pennsylvania Railroad Class Q2 Duplex. The Q2 holds a record that no other steam locomotive has ever matched. During testing at the Pennsylvania Railroad's Altoona test plant in the spring of 1945, Q2 number 675 produced 7,987 indicated cylinder horsepower. That is the highest horsepower figure ever recorded for any steam locomotive on a static test plant, period. The Q2 was a 4464 duplex freight locomotive. 26 were built, with one prototype completed in August 1944, and 25 production units following in 1945, all at the PRR's Juniata shops in Altoona, Pennsylvania. They were the largest non-articulated locomotives ever built. With 115,800 pounds of tractive effort, the PRR claimed a Q2 could pull 125 freight cars at 50 miles per hour. They were 78% more powerful than any freight locomotive the Pennsylvania Railroad had previously operated. But like the T1, the Q2 was born too late. Despite their incredible power, they were only marginally more capable than the conventional J1 Class 2 10-4s, while costing far more to operate and maintain. With dieselization sweeping the industry, the Q2s were the first targets for withdrawal. All were out of service by 1951 and scrapped by 1956. Not a single Q2 was preserved. All that remains are two number plates and a builder's plate. Number 5. Union Pacific Big Boy. No list of overbuilt locomotives is complete without the Big Boy. Built by the American Locomotive Company between 1941 and 1944, 25 of these 4884 articulated behemoths were commissioned exclusively for Union Pacific to haul heavy freight over Utah's Wasatch Range during World War II. The Big Boy is 133 feet long, weighs 1.2 million pounds with its tender, and uses two sets of 8 massive driving wheels. It was designed for stability at 80 miles per hour, though it typically operated in freight service well below that speed. Peak drawbar horsepower was reached at about 41 miles per hour. During testing on April 2, 1943, number 414 generated a maximum of 5,530 horsepower while pulling 65 freight cars between Ogden, Utah and Evanston, Wyoming. The Big Boy routinely pulled freight trains of up to 4,200 tons. The name itself was an accident. An unknown worker at the American Locomotive Company scrawled "Big Boy" in chalk on the smokebox door of number 4000 while it was still under construction, and the nickname stuck. 8 survive in museums and public displays across the country, and number 4014 was famously restored to full operation in 2019. As of 2026, it is on a historic coast-to-coast tour celebrating America's 250th birthday, making it the world's largest operating steam locomotive. Number 4. Union Pacific Gas Turbine Electric Locomotives. While other railroads were buying diesels in the late 1940s and 1950s, Union Pacific decided that diesel was not powerful enough. They wanted something bigger, louder, and more extreme. The answer was the gas turbine electric locomotive, and Union Pacific operated the largest fleet of them ever assembled. Beginning in 1948 with a prototype from General Electric, Union Pacific eventually acquired 55 gas turbine electric locomotives in 3 generations. The most powerful were the third-generation units delivered between 1958 and 19. These massive machines produced 8,500 horsepower each, making them the most powerful single-unit locomotives in the world at the time. They burned bunker C heavy fuel oil, which was essentially the cheapest, thickest petroleum product available, so heavy that it had to be heated before it could be pumped into the turbine. The turbines were spectacularly powerful, but also spectacularly loud. Railroad workers nicknamed them Big Blows because the turbine exhaust was deafening. They consumed fuel at a prodigious rate and were hellishly complex to maintain. But on the long, flat stretches of the American West, where Union Pacific needed maximum tonnage hauled at speed, these turbines earned their keep throughout the 1950s and into the early 1960s. They were retired between 1963 and 1970 as more efficient high-horsepower diesels became available. Only one third-generation turbine survives at the Illinois Railway Museum. Number 3. Norfolk and Western Class Y6B. While most American railroads were rushing to dieselize in the late 1940s, the Norfolk and Western was still building brand new steam locomotives. The Y6B Class 2882 compound articulated locomotives, built between 1948 and 1952 at the railroad's Roanoke shops, were the last mainline steam locomotives constructed in the United States for domestic use. These were coal-hauling machines designed for one of the toughest railroad jobs in the country, dragging heavy coal trains over the steep grades of the Appalachian Mountains. The Y6B produced 152,206 pounds of starting tractive effort in compound mode, making it one of the highest tractive effort figures ever recorded for a steam locomotive. They were specifically engineered for slow, heavy drag service, grinding up mountain grades at 10 to 15 miles per hour with enormous loads behind them. The N&W built these locomotives because they genuinely believed steam was still superior for their specific operating conditions. They had cheap coal from their own lines, expert shop forces who could build and maintain steam power efficiently, and a system designed around steam operations. The last Y6B was completed in 1952, and they served until 1960, making them among the very last steam locomotives in regular mainline service in the United States. Number 21556, the final steam locomotive built by the N&W, is preserved at the National Museum of Transportation in St. Louis. Number 2. EMD DDA40X Centennial. When Union Pacific retired its gas turbines in the 1960s, it needed a diesel replacement that could match their power. The answer came from Electromotive Division of General Motors. The DDA40X, nicknamed the Centennial because the first unit was delivered in April 1969, just in time for the 100th anniversary of the first Transcontinental Railroad's completion. The DDA40X is the most powerful diesel-electric locomotive ever built on a single frame. Each unit packed two 16-cylinder 645 E3A diesel engines, producing a combined 6,600 horsepower. They were 98 feet 5 inches long, so massive that the frames had to be fabricated by an outside contractor because they were too large for EMD's own factory. 47 units were built exclusively for Union Pacific, numbered 6900 through 6946. These locomotives were engineering test beds as well as workhorses. The modular electronic control systems first used on the DDA40X were later incorporated into the widely successful EMD-2 series. Each Centennial ran approximately 2 million miles before retirement from revenue service in the mid-1980s. Despite their excellent performance, rising maintenance costs led to their storage and eventual retirement. 13 DDA40X units survive today in museums and collections across the United States, and number 6936, the sole operating unit, was donated to the Railroading Heritage of Midwest America in 2022 and returned to operation. Number 1. Union Pacific Challenger Class. Our number 1 spot goes not to the biggest or the most powerful, but to the most perfectly overbuilt locomotive of the golden era. The Union Pacific Challenger Class 4-664 articulated locomotives were the machines that actually did everything their designers promised, and did it brilliantly. Originally introduced in 1936, the refined wartime Challengers, built between 1942 and 1944, represented the peak of the design. Union Pacific's Chief Mechanical Officer Otto Jebelman and his team created a locomotive that could haul both heavy freight and fast passenger trains with equal ability. With 69-inch driving wheels and a boiler pressure of 280 pounds per square inch, the Challenger produced 97,350 pounds of tractive effort while still being capable of sustained speeds above 70 miles per hour. It was the rare articulated locomotive that was equally at home on a drag freight or an express passenger run. Union Pacific ordered 105 Challengers in total, making it one of the largest classes of articulated locomotives ever built for a single railroad. They worked everywhere on the system, from the mountains of Wyoming to the deserts of Nevada. The Challenger design was so successful that it directly inspired the even larger Big Boy. In fact, the Big Boy was essentially an enlarged Challenger with bigger driving wheels and a larger firebox. Number 3985. The last Challenger built, operated in excursion service for Union Pacific for decades, and was one of the most famous steam locomotives in the country. It was retired in 2020 and donated to the Railroading Heritage of Midwest America, which plans to restore it. The Challenger represents everything the Golden Era stood for. Build it bigger, build it stronger, build it to last, and then push it harder than anyone thought possible. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me which locomotive impressed you the most. I will see you in the next one.